Willow Lane, where elegance will meet tranquility in the heart of Accra. We provide quality housing at an affordable cost and also with a flexible payment option. At Whaley Properties, we provide you with 24-hour security, reliable power supply, and other social amenities to make your stay a memorable one. All you have to do now, pick up your phone, note these numbers, give them a call. 0240 111 119 or 0504 499 999. You can also visit www.waylead.org.
Well, let me tell you about how every year thousands of Ghana's brightest minds seek better prospects abroad, leaving a gap in our workforce, and how we can fix that. The question we're asking is, how can we inspire talents in this country to stay? You want to join David Ofosu-Dorte, Professor Mary Shetrana, and Her Excellency Dr. Amina Gurib Fakim, former President of Mauritius, at the 12th edition of the Afenyo-Markin and Associates Business Roundtable to discuss managing the talent exodus, leveraging private-public partnerships for growth. This is happening on the 7th of May 2025 at Labadi Beach Hotel, and it starts at 9 a.m. prompt. To register your attendance, simply text your name and organization to this number, 0530 117 202. Or you can also send an email to info@ieyamson.com. The news review is on now, and our guest joining us, Dr. Kwame Asasante, is joining us via Zoom. And in the studio with us is Professor Michael Ayamga. He's a development economist. Prof, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Let me check if we have Dr. Kwame Asasante on Zoom with us as well. Hi, Doc. Good morning.
Hi, Sweetie. Good morning. Good morning to Ben and Prof, of course. And Good morning to our viewers.
Good morning, Doc.
Well, let's start with you then, Doc. You know how we do it. You have about a minute and a half to walk us through your trail of thoughts for us this morning. And then we'll come back in the studio. Yes.
Yeah. I'll start with something that has been on my mind since time immemorial. But looking at what the government is doing, I feel that it's important that government may give it a thought of what I'm going to say. We have to work towards Ghana beyond IMF. This is a fact. It's not every day that we want to go to IMF. We want to raise resources here and use it to develop our own system, a system that we can call our own. And one surest way by which we can do this is what? Through tourism. Tourism. There are a lot of tourist potentials in this country. And I feel that if we are able to take them seriously and plan and execute them properly, I'm sure we can rake in a lot. And there is one example that we can look at and see if it is possible. We emulate here and then use it as status for such a program. In the United States, any president who leaves office, they build in your hometown your museum. Is it not possible for us to also begin to look at this and build museums for our leaders? That will serve as a tourist site. When people go there, they pay for the tour, they pay for souvenir, they pay for food and other things, and it creates jobs for people. This is free money that is there for us to grab. Can you imagine we going to build the resting place of President Liman, and then people will fly from, other parts of the world to Tamale and continue to Golu? We go to, Keita to build the home of Mr. Rawlings, his resting place there. And then we go to other places where we had our leaders. I'm sure this will be a good thing. I had opportunity in 2017 to be at Kennedy Museum in Boston, and I saw a lot. I believe that this is one of the proposals that we can consider if we really want to go beyond IMF.
Thank you so much, Doc. And Prof, your take now.
Yes, my take directly takes me back to my home in northern region, where there is some upheaval regarding the request of Ndani Yana to His Excellency John Dramani Mahama to consider.
Can you please speak up a bit? Consider
renaming the Yakubu Tale Airport to Bewa International Airport, and that has generated some upheaval. Some have made distasteful comments about the king, and they have been arrested. I'm thinking that going forward, we need to be more engaging when it comes to naming such national edifices. Anytime there's the slightest inclinations towards a disturbance in the northern region, it takes me back to the days of the tensions, and I don't want anything to disturb it. I believe that if you want to name something in a kingdom and there's a traditional overhead, the best option would have been to give him his option. Do you have an idea? Collate some names, collate views so that these things don't arrive. I am particularly excited because the name Gbewa is historical. It embodies the whole of northern Ghana. And then it's inclusive. There is no one ranging from the Gonjes to the Gombes to Mampuses, even the entirety of northern Ghana. We all find some connection one way or the other to the Gbewa dynasty. And I thought that Ndanya Ana's request was much in line so that the airport, which is an edifice and a point of unification of the entire northern Ghana, doesn't appear one-sided. And those who have taken to the media to make disparaging remarks about the overlord, they are disturbing. And I believe that governments in the future must take steps to ensure that there is no rancor and disturbances after naming of such edifices.
Right. Ah, well. Okay, so let's get into the newspapers and see what stories are in there. I have the news center, and I want to start from there. Heavy rainstorm wreaks havoc in Accra. We saw that reports this morning from the ANC where about 30 vehicles were affected, but no casualties have been recorded yet. And Dr. Isiama proposes 2 reforms to bring MPC closer to the public. That is Monetary Policy Committee. And Minority Leader accuses government of intimidation. Then we have the story of 1,347 ECG containers missing at Tema Port. This story is as wild as I read it. I don't know how containers can disappear into thin air, but when we get to that bit, I'll read out some details and then we can discuss. Republic Bank Ghana marks RFHL milestone as Staff Excellence Ball. And then Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia donates 200,000 CDs and 1,000 bags of cement to a Doom Blue Light fire victim. So let's get into the newspaper. And I want to start from the story about the missing containers. And that story is on page 4 of the news center. So an independent audit has revealed that 1,347 containers belonging to the Electricity Company of Ghana are unaccounted for at the Tema Port. ECG initially claimed to have 2,491 uncleared containers filled with cables and other essential equipment. However, an investigative audit found only 1,134 containers at the port, leaving a significant shortfall of 1,357 missing containers. I heard this story last night. I think it was on Newsnight. I don't know at what point you heard the story, but what was your reaction to it?
Yes, I was just flying into Accra when I landed, and I heard it, and I also read my former colleague, Dr. John Jinapo, talking about it. And I was just standing on the street and watching trailers with containers pass, and I was just imagining how many 1,300 containers would look like, and how they managed to disappear in such a security zone. I think that it is something that just points to the level of rot, impunity and disregard for law in our country. And if we are having energy crisis, if we are having a problem with our energy sector, we need to point at these things and realize that it is not just politicians. A lot goes down the line, because I don't think that if these containers were actually purchased, because what I'm thinking of is maybe they were just trumped up in the books to make it look high, but people actually didn't buy them. And then maybe that may point to officials and authorities. But if the containers were physically at the port and they had disappeared, I believe that we have to be making thorough and sweeping purging of the port, because it's disturbing. 1,300 containers I can't imagine how many sports stadiums that's going to fill. Well, let's just leave the monetary value. It speaks about the rot in our system. And I have very much confidence in John Jinapor and the energy minister to tackle this. But it goes beyond him.
Right.
It's a whole security and corruption problem that when you have to deal with.
I hear minority are offering their full support to help them bring some sanity to this matter. But Dr. Kwame Asante, what did you make of this story?
Very serious story, but I'm not surprised because corruption is rife in the public sector. But I am very hopeful that this government will walk the talk of fighting corruption head on. And given what Jinapor has started, the energy minister, I believe that he will get to the bottom of this so that we end it once and for all. It's becoming one too many. And we should make it a point that we fight corruption to the extent that it becomes unattractive to people who want to go to public office so as to milk us dry. And I support the government that they should use all means available, provided they are legal, and then get the wrongs corrected so that we will be able to save a lot. Remember, corruption takes a lot of resources from this country. If we are able to even fix that, IMF will not go there.
Right. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Let me sort of rush through the the news center, and then I'll stop on one major story, and then we can move on from there. Baumia donates 200,000 Ghana cedis to the victims of that Edum Kumasi fire. Majority Leader hails President Mahama as talk and do leader. And the Supreme Court to rule on removal of security heads on May 7th. Access to education rises, but quality shows fluctuations. That is a report by the Ghana Statistical Service. And they've revealed that while access to education in Ghana has steadily increased over the years, the quality of education has fluctuated. And you can reflect on this briefly when I come to you. Government to take on board all constructive criticism on 2025 budget commentaries, and Minority Leader accuses government of intimidation. I think I want to stop on the story of, it was a story I saw about, okay, just a second. Let me go to the back page and see if that story is there. Partey doubles inspires Ghana to victory. Cote d'Ivoire maintain Group F lead. That is not the story I'm looking for. But we can, COP, yes, Mrs. Mamiya Tiwa Adodankwa, a police career marked by political misconception. I know this is an editorial, but I just want to take your impression of Mamiya Adodankwa Tiwa's political career and what you make of it. And then you can reflect on the state of education as reported. This time I want to start with you, Dr. Kwame Asante.
Mamitiwa's editorial, I've not read it. If you can give me a gist of it.
Well, the first time COP Mrs. Mamiya Tiwa Adodankwa received a promotion through special recommendation was during the tenure of Mr. Mohammed Al-Hassan as Inspector General of Police under President John Dramani Mahama. It goes on and on, really. It talks about the mystery of COP Adodankwa, a surprising new appointment at the NDC, Yoko appointment and political scrutiny, and political labels and career projection. I think it's just like a comprehensive assessment of a sort on her entire political career. But I don't think we have time, Doc, to go into all the details.
Yeah, what I glean from it is that, you know, when we're working in public office, we have to distinguish ourselves and work to the best of our abilities, and then ensure that the systems that are in place will promote us accordingly. That's all. So politics associated with it, we must do away and make sure that meritocracy exists within the public service, and that those who deserve promotion get, not because of any political consideration. But I'll move on to the issue of quality education.
Right.
Yet we are experiencing access to education increases, but quality dips. That is a worrying situation. Much as we want to see access expanded, we also want to see corresponding, increase in quality of education. So I think it is incumbent upon this new administration to take note of this and fix this problem. Recently, I heard a story about a school in Nanumba, and I think, no, Bimbila, where children are living in dilapidated building in that building with cracks and all that. Yesterday, another story that children not only escape death, because there was a building which was near collapsing and all that. These are ugly spectacles that we don't want to see within the country educational system. It is not enough to say that you've expanded education without the basic logistics not available. We need everything so that children can have safe environment to study and then, improve their lot so that their God-given talents will be nurtured, tapped, and developed and used for the development of this country.
Thank you, Doc. And this is a report from Ghana Statistical Service, and they did it in collaboration with the Ministry of Education. I just want to give you some context, Prof. They're saying that the findings showed that the gross enrollment rate at kindergarten level more than doubled over the past 2 decades, from 51% to 122%. And similarly, the primary gross enrollment rate increased from 80% to 90%. Junior high school rose from 64% to 98%, and senior high school tripled from 25% to 72%. But quality shows fluctuations.
Yes, I think we have not actually been making our education plans with our population and the demographic change into taking that in the mind. Because you see, as the middle class grows, as many people get enlightened, they send their wards to school. In the past, you could just go to some parts in northern Ghana and almost half the kids are not in school. Now everybody wants to send their kids in school. So I think that is driving the trends we are seeing. And we just encourage people to go to school, but we don't actually take these statistics into consideration and talk about maybe what buildings we should put in place, how many teachers we should engage. If we were doing that, it will allow for some amount of harmony in our employment sector. Because what has been happening in the country is you just see every ministry advertising to employ. Nobody actually does a needs assessment properly. So if you realize that this year we need more teachers, why don't you sacrifice some immigration, some even in the military or some in other sectors, and then employ more teachers? We have to take the statistics into consideration. But more importantly, we have to divorce education from politics. Education has been overly politicized to the point that even among us in the education institution, beginning to wear out its faces. I'm now fearing a point where we'll be grading students based on their political activity and lineage in the school, because it is getting there if we don't stop it. Being a technocrat or an expert in an area doesn't matter anymore. Politician just gets up and say, do this in education, and you are doing it. And when you talk, they have to say you are saying this.
And there's systems in place to check these things so that we don't get to that point where you just talk about where we're grading, students based on political affiliations rather than, merits.
I'm saying if we don't stop the politicization, it will get there. It will get there because the universities, the senior secondary schools are getting overly politicized. Student engagement in the public space is no longer an issue of me learning the act of leadership, honing my skills. No, they are actually into politics. Many of us have our political leanings we've been hiding in the past, but it gets to a point that you have to show it because it becomes a means of you either saving your job or rising through the system. And it's disturbing. It's disturbing that now, if you want to be vice chancellor, and let me just put this in context, I was at the administration and somebody was saying that, okay, if you have to be vice chancellor, a lot of things has to go right, including who is in power at the time. These are not things that should be happening in our education sector. It used to be a symbol of pride when you are able to rise to that level, regardless of which political party is in power. The institutions are broken down. The structures that you are mentioning are virtually non-existent, or even where they are there, they are extremely dysfunctional. And we ought to take that into consideration. Dr. Asayanas bear the brunt of all the poor quality in our education system. When everybody, all the students are now brought onto us, and we are supposed to work magic to produce an employable and competent person. And I can tell you, the material we take in is increasingly becoming impossible to get them to be literate. That's just read and write, let alone be competent in a particular area. So it's extremely important, and I'm sounding this caution to the entire government machinery, both the opposition and the government, that they are not doing this country any favors by overly politicizing education.
But just a quick point on that. I remember, as you spoke, the Kwame Nkrumah Ideological Institute and some thoughts about that. Having lived in Cuba, they have their own propagandist machinery, and how everybody in the country seems to think a certain way based on a certain national agenda, a certain national pride and all of that. Even if you look at their athletes, they have a certain way of going about things, boxers among others. And even in baseball, I ask myself, when it comes to the politicians you refer to, are we not aware of the problem? Look at Tescon and Tain in our tertiary institutions. A lot of the people you would see in governance today, especially the young crop, came through these entry points. They engaged in student politics, either seeking, even now, SRCs are full of partisan elements. Yeah. So I think we have to stop pretending. Yeah. I'm not saying it's wrong to do student politics or partisan politics at that level, but if you make it so rewarding that once you go through that system, you get rewarded, PRO, then they move to the next, we are going to create this problem that, in fact, we have created that problem, and we have to find a way of addressing it. You know it, the politicians know it. How do we solve it? That's just what I want.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Let me pause here. Let's do some other papers. I do have the Accra Times and the Custodian, but if we have time, I'll come back to it. Prof, which one do you have?
Yes, I also have the, I was looking at the Punch Africa.
Right.
And I definitely wanted to talk about the AG dragging two people to court in alarming scandals. That's because it hits home. It hits close to home. Dr. Dominic Ayine is my MP and also a brother. And when I saw him talking, I've seen some commentary following it. And I've known Dr. Dominic Ayine since my student days when I was in Legon as well. And this is somebody who has some humanity to him. And when I saw these scandals, especially somebody and the wife locked up, I was already thinking, what about the kids? And so on. So I got a bit alarmed. But the humanity of the Attorney General started showing up when he talked about the issues of somebody taking a plea bargaining and getting a reduced sentence or letting to work. And I want us to be very dispassionate about this discourse, that we are only muddying the water and making things complicated. Should these culprits be found guilty at the end of the day and they don't actually take a path and they go maybe the full sentence, that's going to affect their families. I'm particularly surprised by the lack of sophistication in the things that have been done. And I like watching crime movies, and I said I wouldn't have paid a CD to watch what happened. The environment of impunity. How does a security operative commit such an obvious crime? You have to ask yourself. And allegedly, let me add, it maybe is the environment at the time. Nobody was afraid that one day somebody is going to come after you. How do you go just transfer money to an account and then go draw it yourself? So I was looking at the brazen impunity with which some of these acts are occurring, and I asked myself, what could have accounted for it? How far what drove us here? But I want us to, as Ghanaians, much as we want to talk about this issue as a corrupt, we should also look at the individuals involved. I don't think that Dr. Dominic Ayine, as I know him, needs prosecutions of people to be validated. He is, I know him very, very well.
Right. We
have told him in the constituency sometimes to tell a little lies, otherwise he sits in trouble. He will always refuse.
Okay. And
people tend to listen to him. So that is my advice on this matter, that families are involved. People have the tendency to grow up not knowing their kids. And once things like this come to the media, we have to think of the families. Yeah.
Dr. Kwame Sasanti, I want to hear your thoughts on this. Looks like there are two sides of the coin. I mean, the intersection between human rights and fighting corruption, trying this case in the public opinion versus procedural breaches that minority is saying. Drop a pin. What's on your mind in terms of this issue?
One, I will start by saying that corruption is rife in this country, and you can find it in every aspect of public life. Evidence can be seen in the figures within the Transparency International, and is there. You will be inundated with figures in there. But that aside, this country, if you read our constitution, the preamble, it tells us that we, the people of this country, believe in certain principles, such as probity, accountability, and all that. So at a point in time, if any government decide to probe into issues, I have no problem whatsoever. But what we want to always remind government of, that they must do whatever they do within the framework of the law. And that is where human rights are catered for. That is where respect for dignity is also in there. So once you conduct your activity within the ambit of the law, I do not want to believe that you will cross the lines. But if you do, we as a society must point it out to you. Remember that this government or this country has signed on to the good governance principle, that we are ready to fight corruption, and then we are also ready to ensure accountability, and that all these principles ought to be rooted through a transparency process that is verifiable, process that people have information, process that everybody will follow. So we need to guide ourselves through this. Once we are able to get the legal basis right, I'm sure we are home and dry.
Okay. Thank you, Doc and Prof. Ben?
Well, I'll start with the Ghanaian Times newspaper. National Education Statistics report, quality education fluctuates through access to school, though access to school increases in past 2 decades. And a lot of talk about that from 2000 to 2023 and what has been happening. Minister orders probe into 1.5 billion Ghana cedi ECG value containers disappearance, and that is definitely a story I'm getting into. 3 killed, 3 injured in Binduri gun attack. Youth group calls for curfew. And on the back page of the paper, lack of psychiatrists affecting mental health care in Bono East region. Dr. Apia says so. Our attitude as a country to mental health is one that I guess ought to be studied. And 4 institutions sign MOU for competency-based training in recycling technology. I'll start with the bit on mental health. There is not even one psychiatrist in the Bono East region making detection and treatment of mental health issues. The story says a bit challenging. A bit? Currently, the region relies on a few psychiatric health nurses to manage mental health cases. Now, the Bono East Regional Director of Health Services, Dr. Paulina Clara Apia, who discloses to the Ghanaian Times, he has said during emergency situations, mental health cases had to be referred to other facilities such as Komfo Anokye Teaching Hospital and others across the country. According to the National Population Census, Ghanaian Times, there are a lot of mistakes in this story. I can count at least about 6, spelling, wrong use of words. Anyway, here instead of census, I'm seeing conscious. The Bono East region has a population of 1,308,861 with 11 administrative districts. But according to the speaker, a total of 230 health workers posted to the region last year. Most of them rejected their postings due to high cost of accommodation, inadequate working facilities affecting doctor-patient population ratio in the region. Editor of the Ghanaian Times newspaper, acting editor Alhaj Salifu Abdul Rahman, you really need to check this story on the back page of the paper. And you know, the story is not storying. But let's focus on the meat of the matter. I'll start with you, Doc. Mental health care in Ghana, it appears we've gone to sleep. Whether it's at work, whether it's at school, there are a lot of school children. Sometimes when you speak to them, it is clear. You lecture. I'm sure you see some people that sometimes, whether the economic situation or something, they are stressed. Their mental state is not right. Yet we pretend nothing is happening. What's your take on this?
You've hit the nail right on the head. This has been a problem, and the country seems to pay lip service to it. I think last week I had a conversation with a friend who is in psychology, and I told him that, hey, my brother, you guys have a lot to do. There are a lot of mental issues here. But yes, we'll discuss that. It's simply because we have not attached the needed importance to the problem. So the resources that need to get in there to support the effort at dealing with this problem has been inadequate. We channel resources to very unimportant ventures, and we leave more pressing issues unattended to. And that is the price we are paying for. I believe that we need to step up our game and deal with this problem once and for all, because it's becoming one too many. And if we don't take care, the effect, we will not be able to handle it. Look at all over, issue of mental health is on the increase, but our attention is not on that. We are focusing on things that you and I do not need, things that do not bring any benefit to us. I think we must get our priorities right.
Thank you for those quick points. You also teach. You're a lecturer as well.
Yes.
Do you ever encounter students whom, visibly are stressed, depressed, frustrated?
Oh, yes, it's a common thing, especially when I was senior hall tutor and I had to, from one point in other, counsel students. You just see the deficiency in our health system. It is designed to think of mental health as those on the streets who are already mad, and that is at the tail end of things. We don't have systems in place that try to preempt these things and to put in structures to ensure that people who are actually having some mental challenges, it doesn't escalate. So we don't have anything in place to even detect these things early. Psychologists will always tell us, my friend, that we are all mad to a certain degree, and
it just doesn't manifest to the point where
manifest to the point. And we ought to take this thing seriously now, especially given the opioid crisis we are facing in the country. Just a week ago, some people were doing some work for me, and the young boys, and they came to say, if I want them to finish the work today, I have to go and get them some cocktail of concoctions. I said, you people, are you serious? But
we're asking you to get that.
Yeah, that people do it now. If you want young people to actually be strong enough to work, they have to take opioids. They are not even strong to work for an hour, whether it's in farming or they are doing construction work, and people take it deliberately. So that is where we are headed. Apart from actually going after the opioid crisis, we have to begin to put in our mental institutions in place. In the universities, it's serious. A simple challenge with one course or two can push a student over the edge. And we have to see this. I can say I don't remember us having, let's say, a psychiatrist in our establishment designated to helping students deal with mental challenges.
I mean, look at the issue here, an entire region.
Yeah.
An entire region, not even one psychiatrist in the Bono East region. How is that even possible?
And also, let's look at training. We have to look at the training of medical personnel. And you realize that the desire to do it is not there. People would rather be gynecologists, neurologists, and the rest than go to be a psychiatrist. And we have to incentivize that sector to ensure that people can become psychiatrists and still earn a decent living. They used to call one doctor, the late Dr. Abdullahi, that philanthropist, made his own recipes, the mad doctor. That was because he used to help people who were mentally challenged. But you can imagine that tag on somebody who wants to be a medical professional in that field, what is going to happen. Yeah. So apart from giving incentives to that area, we need to also know that a doctor is a doctor, and a doctor with the most patience is the psychiatrist, I can say.
I'll blaze through a few more stories. Do you have any
Just to say that, don't underestimate what a good therapy session can do for you. I mean, while we're advocating for medical professionals and all, we should also sort of encourage people to seek help when they need it. So take it from experience. A good therapy session, it will reset you right back. So that's that.
And we simply don't have the culture of going to see, like in America, they will call a shrink, right? So people think, if you're going, hey, wabadam, watichi, that kind of mentality. So there's even a stigma with seeking help when you need it because, we are all shouldering our problems. But people break at different levels. Yeah. You get it? What you may be able to take, the next person may not be able to shoulder. We're all different. Which is why, for example, if someone gives birth, there's the trauma for some. Postpartum depression. And but we all give birth. Why you be dodo and all of that. People have mental health issues, and in this country, it's like if you bring it up, you are being too much. Yeah, when the person gets on the streets, then we realize that actually the issue was serious. But just quickly through a few more stories. 3 killed, 3 injured in Binduri gun attack. Youth group calls for curfew. And 3 people have been shot dead and 3 others injured when some unidentified men attacked residents of Natinga in the Binduri district of the Upper East region. The deceased have been identified as Awuni Sumaila, 58, Amadou Shaibu, 41, and Aguma Adam, 48. The injured are also identified as Itifu Seidu, 46, Bukari Seidu, 54, and Idris Azab, who is 40. Disturbing news. Suit against removal of IGP security agency heads dismissed. And a 5-member panel of the Supreme Court yesterday dismissed an application seeking to stop President John Dramani Mahama from removing former Inspector General of Police, Dr. George Ekufu-Dampare, and heads of other security agencies from office. Justice Paul Bafuboni, who presided over the panel, and if you hear Bafuboni, it must bring back some memories, if you remember, who presided over the panel, said the actions of the president were not intended to overreach the Supreme Court. If you want more details of that, go to that story. Quality education fluctuates, though access to school increases for past 2 decades. And although access to education has steadily increased for the past 2 decades, quality of education has fluctuated. A Ghana Statistical Service National Education Statistics report has revealed. The report said over the 2 decades, the pupil-teacher ratio, that's the PTR, saw a slight decline across 3 education levels, kindergarten, primary, and junior high schools, with some fluctuations. However, at the primary level, the PTR increased to approximately 38 pupils per teacher in 2022 and 2023. It goes on and on. Let me do my final story. I just want to box all of them together. Minister orders probe into 1.5 billion Ghana cedi ECG value containers disappearance. This country called Ghana. The Minister of Energy and Green Transition, Mr. John Abdullahi Janapo, has ordered a full-scale investigation into the disappearance of 1,328 containers belonging to the Electricity Company of Ghana at the port. According to the minister, a total of 2,491 containers was identified as being held at the port. However, ECG itself could only account for some of them, leaving 1,328 unaccounted for. The estimated value, which is where I'm ending, of all the containers was about 1.5 billion Ghana cedis. In which country will you see something like this? Doc, let me start with you.
Yeah, I think some of the stories we have touched on them, but I will go back to look at majority saying that they will take all the contributions, criticisms about the budget, and then do the needful by giving us something that is worth looking at. I think that is the spirit behind governance, and that you must be ready to accept criticisms and also bear in mind that their criticisms are the oils that grease the wheels of governance, without which it grinds to a halt. So it doesn't matter how painful the criticisms may be. You should be able to take them in your strides and then look at them where they mean well, you incorporate, and then help society in dealing with our problems. Not everybody will speak the same points as you have in mind. People may have their own views and ideas, but when they mean a lot, please let us not ignore them. That is the spirit behind every democratic enterprise.
Thanks for your thoughts. Let me come to you, Prof.
Yes, as you mentioned, the issue of the containers at the port is something I want to see it used as an example to kickstart the overhaul of our institutions. I believe that this morning already some people should be walking. If the containers were really there and they are gone, you shouldn't have your job. You should probably begin to go home. It should be a sweeping thing. I don't want a situation where you are launching probes and so on. I think that there should be action, and this is nationally disgracing. We don't want to be going through it. Just let's leave the value aside. How can such a thing happen? It means that the actors are many, the stakeholders. It's a wide network, and you started by cracking down such actions. Of course, I'm also very happy with the posturing of government that they are willing to take criticisms. For me, when they present budgets, I think that we ought to stop the act of comparing this man's budget to that man's budget. It's what somebody ought to do. So if you can suggest areas they should have tackled and other things, that's the essence of a budget. But budgets have become very politically charged events that once they present it, it becomes issues of banter. What I would say is that we still go through this distributive budget approach where we want to give small to every sector. I want to see a point where we can begin to be more focused. We shouldn't adopt the agenda.
I saw this coming.
Yeah, agenda 111 type of hospitals where you spread them through the country and you can't finish all of them.
Right.
It hasn't got to a point where we become more sectorial. We put our money where our mouth is, and also look at the returns to investment in the various sectors.
Right.
Where do we get the most for every CD we invest in the economy? Do we put more there to ensure that at least the economy is growing? Then we can take those proceeds and spread it. The idea of let me give this ministry this ministry that, and then we'll leave the most important things out is always leading to us spending money and not actually getting a lot out of it.
The Ghanaian publisher, just headlines. Sam George sacks 100 Ghana Post workers. He's given reasons for that. Persecution won't break our spirit, Afenyo-Markin tells Mahama. And indeed, it shouldn't. But if wrongs have been done, then the law should break the rot. That should happen. Attorney General under fire over public trial of Edu Boahene, and Baumia donates 200,000 Ghana cedis and 1,000 bags of cement to Edum fire victims. That's a wrap for me, sweetie.
No, that's it for the news review. Thank you all so much for joining us. The custodian has all the stories, really. We've got into that already. You can't bully us, Minority tells AG. We'll seek justice for Edu Boahene. Legal team says Mustafa Yusuf highlights NPP's unmatched sports infrastructure. Those who join us for this conversation, Professor Ayamga is a development economist with West African Center for Sustainable Rural Transformation. And of course, Dr. Kwame Asa Asante. He is a political scientist and head Center for European Studies at the University of Ghana. Thank you, Doc. Thank you, Prof, for joining us this morning. You want to stay with us because sports comes up next.